Hello, everyone. Oh, I can start seeing it's been a long but productive day. This is the 100 series check-in number 4. And yeah, so if you don't know what I'm talking about, I'm making a series of small scale affordable artwork to help pay for some classes and some upgrades at the cottage, some equipment and materials. So I'm super excited. Hopefully, people will like them as I finish them. In part one of the check in, I showed people how I did the first layer of collage. And I showed my secret formula for glue. And then in the second, I showed how to use a gel press to do the first layer of paint. And then in the third, I kind of did a check-in to talk about the next layer of paint. Um, so I'm about 75 in, 75% done with the second layer of paint. Um, and I'll flip the camera around and show you that. I think that I'm running out of steam, y'all. So I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna let once I do the second layer on top of everything, I'm gonna let nature do its thing, uh, unsupervised, and do a layer of gesso on the backs and possibly do a layer on top and let that dry overnight and then restart the fun tomorrow morning. Jermaine is watching. She said, "Hi, Andrew. I just watched number 2 and 3 and had to start and just started watching the first one now, but we'll do that after I watch you live." Oh, good. Pam's watching. And she said that I'm up late. I'm usually up at this time. I'm actually usually up at night. This is usually like when I'm headed over to the cottage. William's about to head to bed, and then I go over to the cottage and work until a little after the sun rises. And then when Barb comes in, then I leave. It's like I'm on third shift usually. But since I went to the class, I had to get up super early. So I've been on this weird daytime schedule. Um, so I'm gonna see how long I can do it until nature reclaims its natural form, or whatever. Uh, yeah, so I've been having fun. So I've been experimenting with the second layer with mark making. And if you're not familiar with mark making or you haven't done this, I definitely recommend you do it because it's really fun. Um, it's something that I did while I was in college. One of our tasks was to make as many different kinds of marks as possible. And so it's been kind of fun to think of different ways of mark making. Um, and as I do it more and more, I'm starting to see certain things float to the surface. Um, and yeah, uh, when you look at my work overall, like with my little enamels, I do some like cross hatching and some different mark making in those, and then that's kind of filtered its way into these pieces. And in all likelihood, a lot of this you won't even be able to see after I add some more layers on top of everything. But I think it's good to see the process. It's good to see what goes into the creation of these pieces. A lot of times when people see my work, it's already like finished and it's already on the wall or wherever. And you don't always get to see like all of the work that goes into their making. And you know that a lot of times that's by design. Like I like to keep some things close to the vest. But I also think it's good to share some things. So I'm going to flip this around so that you can see some of the progress that I've made so far. Some of them are they're a little bit tacky still yet. Um, I will say that my joints are on fire because I've been using my hands all day and I've been hunched over all day. So my back is a little bit sore. So I'm excited to kind of relax for the evening once I get uh, the next batch kind of set up. I'm going to try to get everything all to one level, and then let things dry overnight and then relax after they're drying. That'd be so nice because I'm getting a little bit tired. I'll be honest. All right, you're going to see the ceiling for a second. I do kind of want to finish my book on tape though, so we'll see. All right. So I've been playing around. Like these are some stripes. And I like how this is muting out some of the I don't know. It seemed like the first layer of paint there was a lot, it was like really intense. So this helps mute some of that down. And of course I need to go through and clean some of these things up. But like this is that crosshatch pattern that's in a lot of my enamels, and that is kind of a homage to Tanya Crane, who does a lot of mark making in her work, and she's the one who showed me that enameling, that sgraffito technique. So it's always like a nod to where, you know, it's like the lineage, I guess, of where things come from and who taught me how to make things. And I kind of carry each of these people with me when I'm making my work. Here's these lines. And sometimes the mark making gets kind of obscured because I press it down a little bit hard. So like that one you can't really tell as much. But I kind of like it. And I like how the like with the metallics, they kind of peek through the matte layers, so you get a kind of a peekaboo effect. But yeah, right now, like it's not, it's not as exciting. Maybe I think it's exciting, but it's still very abstract, and I know that if you're not really into the abstract kind of art, then it might not be as interesting. When I went to school, I was very much into representational art, but the school that I went to, most of the people were very kind of minimalist and into conceptual art and geometric art and things like that. So when I was learning from them, I adopted some of their styles and really put myself in their kind of world. I worked with one of my first painting teachers in college. His name was Ellsworth Osby, and he was really into color. And so he taught me a lot about mixing color. And so whenever I mix, there's a particular mixture of phthalo green and alizarin crimson. It makes this really beautiful, lush, deep, dark, kind of a bluish black. And whenever I make that color, I think of him. And I was super fortunate to work with Toby Kahn, Toby Khan. He does a lot of uh, abstract art, but also building texture. And also, he did a lot of Judica art. Um, and so a lot of his artwork is based in kind of a spirituality. And so I kind of, there's a little bit of that in there. And there's a, there's, um, I worked with another artist named Stephen Westfall, and he's very much into kind of these minimalist geometrics. And even though my work is very different than that, I can still see where there are different things where, like, if I start gridding things out in quadrants and, um, little things like that. So it's one of those things um, where even though I think that my work is kind of its own thing, it definitely pays homage to those who have taught me and those who have come before me. Um, and so with my family and with my mom and my grandma, who were all very crafty people, crafty, they, a lot of that, you can see that in my work. And a lot of things with textile and texture and repurposing things and using different things that other people might throw away. Um, and I think it's one of those things that the more, the more I kind of look back on my work, I can see how there's a connection to the different people in my life that have influenced my art making. And I think that's a kind of a beautiful thing. It's like it's their legacy kind of lives on through me, maybe in small ways and maybe in very subconscious ways or very subtle ways. But I like to think that, some of those people are no longer with us. Like my grandmother is no longer with us. Ellsworth Osby has since passed. Jack Whitten has passed. There's a lot of different people who have been my mentors and teachers who are no longer here. But I think that I shouldn't say they aren't here, but that they may not physically be here, but I think that their legacy kind of lives on. And so I don't know. I think it's nice where I can include some of those things. And when I make work, I try to, for one, I definitely try to kind of make my mind into I try to focus on creating positive energy. And I know this may sound kind of woo woo for some people, but for me, I feel like when I'm making work, it's a very Zen process. It's very meditative. I do a lot of repetition and a lot of layers that are built up over and over and over and over. And there's a lot of that. And so when you look at like Buddhist art, they will, in their artwork, they will build in different patterns to help facilitate meditative states. And even in the process of making, there are certain things like drawing a line over and over and over, or creating sand drawings and things like that. There's this kind of this altered state, if you will, of making artwork. And so for me, I try to focus on good things and on positive things. I feel like we imbue the things that we create with our energy. I know some people say that that's kind of like a sign of privilege, and that like not everybody has that, but that shouldn't determine or detract from their ability to be makers. And certainly, you know, that people have to do a lot of things and overcome a lot of challenges. But for me, creativity has always been kind of the solution to crafting a better life and creating a better life for me and those that I love. And whenever I face any kind of hardship, I've turned to my creativity, and that's been the answer. That's always been the answer of how to kind of persevere and go forward. So for me, it's almost a very reverent practice. Like if I'm angry, I try not to work when I'm angry, but also as I'm working, I tend to kind of lose myself. And in the process of making, I kind of become more zen. And I think it's one of those things where it's almost like conditioning, mental conditioning, where you know the if you listen to music while you're studying, then you'll be able to recall information quicker when you hear that music. Um, or if you know read before you go to bed, whenever you read, it kind of says, "Oh, it's time for bed." Or if you say a certain thing when you're doing an activity and you're conditioning yourself to have a response whenever you have that trigger or stimulus, it's kind of like that. So it's kind of a catch 22. It's like which came first, the imbuing of art with a positive energy, or the creation of art making that positive energy. So for me, it's kind of like that, where I go into that kind of I kind of zone out and get lost in the making of it. And I that's one of those things. It's making artwork is sometimes challenging. It's like problem solving. It's finding solutions and using my experience and training and happenstance to create visual solutions to problems or challenges or things that I see and need to alter or change. Um, Sometimes I have a very clear vision of what I want to make, and it's all about executing that vision. Sometimes it's kind of becoming a pathfinder and finding a solution and an answer to a question that I may not know about. Sometimes it's the ideas that intrigue me, and I can kind of pull from those ideas and follow them. And there's very clear and definitive styles and motifs and things that I can research and kind of dip and dive into. But sometimes I don't know. And so I kind of have to figure things out as I go. Definitely, whenever I'm making a series like this, it really helps to plan things out. So, as I've been working, I've been jotting down notes in my idea book, and really kind of documenting the process for myself. And that sometimes includes little thumbnail drawings, sometimes it's little lists about different things that I eventually want to incorporate. Um, I'm a planner. I'm sure if William showed you my whiteboards, it's kind of like the method to the madness, but there are these spider webbing lists that it's all about how to plan things out and accomplish different goals. And I do that in my idea book, but I also do that on my whiteboard. And yeah, so, anyways, there I've been kind of methodically going through different things as I've been working. So not only have I been just listening to the Dresden Files, but I've also been thinking about where I want to take this series of artwork. Um, like, I don't know sometimes. Like, I didn't know what would happen when I added this second layer here. but I'm kind of digging it. I'm enjoying this kind of exploration. I've been thinking about people that I haven't thought of in a long time, and I've been thinking about things and trying to kind of embrace where the artwork is taking me. I feel like all these things in our lives are lessons, our thoughts and our feelings and our emotions, they're teachers. And so as I go through this process, I can't necessarily do much of anything else. I have to be kind of in the moment and making things, and my fingers are kind of, occupied with the tasks of tearing paper or painting or pressing things out or whatever. So I'm kind of uh stuck with my thoughts, and it's been interesting to kind of be a fly on the wall inside my own thoughts and thinking about things and ideas and kind of my hopes and aspirations and the things that I want to do and where I want to go in life. And I know that seems kind of big and vague and kind of, I don't know. I don't know. Do you all do that while you're working? Do you all think about other things? I mean, some things you kind of have to think about. Like whenever I'm typing, I have to think about whatever I'm typing. Otherwise, it gets very like weird sounding. Um, but for me, whenever I'm kind of doing these meditative processes, I let my brain kind of explore explore what it wants to see, and I kind of follow it. It's like um there's is it John Singer Sargent who said that sometimes you have to let a line meander or wander. I can't remember. I'll look it up. But there's a really lovely quote where you just have to follow where the line will lead you, right? Jermaine says that happens to me when I go to bed more than when I'm working. I can see that. It's kind of like that dream state. And for me, I'm always trying to figure out how I can kind of exist in that kind of meditative space. And I've talked a lot about this on my personal timeline. But for me, I'm trying to live a better life, where I am not so controlled by my reactions or my trauma, and I can kind of exist from a place of love and compassion and understanding. And to get to that, a lot of that is being kind of acknowledging that the world that we're in is kind of a, I don't know, it's kind of like everything we do is a prayer. And when you think of it like that, it changes things. It's not just about making dinner and being frustrated about how it's going to take so long to cut the onions or whatever, but then it kind of shifts things. So when I start thinking about making artwork, I definitely think of it in uh in a context where even if something takes a long time or something's hard or if it's not working out, or if I'm not, if I paint something and it doesn't look the way I want it to look, it can be frustrating for sure. But then I kind of listen to where that frustration is coming from and how I can apply that to the rest of my life. So if something isn't working out, I think it's one of those things where you have to kind of be okay with letting go of certain ideas and understanding that you have to practice with things and you have to work on different aspects, and sometimes you have to go to a source and learn from that source, and you have to grow in that way. So yeah, Jermaine said that's the Buddhist way to do everything with intention or spirituality. And Jillian says, those are gorgeous. Thank you. So this is my check-in, my number 4 check-in. Um, I don't know if I'm gonna do number 5 tonight or if I'm gonna wait till tomorrow to do the number 5 check-in. Probably tomorrow I'll do the number 5 check-in. I have a meeting at 10, um, and so I don't know how long that meeting is gonna take. So, I don't know, sometime in the afternoon, I'll pop in, and if I do anything to the pieces as I go, I'll try to add it to my stories on my Instagram feed. Now, I have 2 Instagram feeds, so just so you know, there's 2 of them. Um, my my personal one is Andrew T. Thornton 100, and I don't really post that much to it, but it's like flowers and cats um, and things like that. But and then there's also flowers and cats on my professional one, but on my business one, that's Andrew Thornton Artist, and it's Thornton, and yeah, so I've been posting to the stories there, and if you want to see what I was doing in Elizabeth Brim's class, you can go through the posts for the past week or so and see pretty much what I've done on a daily basis. And kind of, I talk about what we learned in our class each day and kind of my personal goals in each class. Um, I think it was really helpful for me um, for understanding fire management for with a coal fire. Um, Before I kind of just like got things hot and would hit it, but I didn't really understand that if you maintain your fire and you maintain it in a certain way, number one, you don't burn through so much fuel. Number two, you can get your metal hotter faster. Um, and a part of that, and I'm going to segue to something else while I'm thinking about it, is that when I first took blacksmithing classes, my hands were ripped up. I mean, they were torn up. I got blisters, and then I got blisters on underneath the blisters, blisters on top of blisters, and they popped, and it was very painful. And I didn't get that this time. And part of that is understanding about how um, and is understanding some of my limitations. I'm not a very strong person. Maybe like more like morally, I'm strong, and I don't know, mentally, I may be strong in some ways, but physically, I'm not one of the strongest people in the room. So, and I know that, like, I don't work out, and I don't really prioritize strength training, so I know that I'm not physically very strong. But one of the nice things about working with Elizabeth and different teachers who are smaller of stature or, may also not be physically very strong is that if you heat up the metal to the right temperature, it becomes very soft and you can manipulate it way easier if you get it to the right temperature and you use the right tools and you control your hammer blows, and you can do a lot without physically exhausting yourself, for one, and number two, without damaging your body. So part of my workshop with Elizabeth in part was kind of understanding my body mechanics more, how to hold the hammer so that I would strike the best that it could and make the most impact without expending the most energy. So all of those are kind of connected. Where if you can manage your fire, you can also control how hot your metal is. And if you have a hotter fire, you can move the metal a little bit easier and you don't get things like stress fractures, and you don't get cold shunts and different things like that. So it's super important. And before, when I've taken classes, I didn't really think about it. I just kind of put it in the fire and it got kind of warmish colored, and I would hit it then. But I didn't really understand that the different colors are indicators of how much the metal will move. Sometimes you don't want the metal to move a lot. Sometimes you want the metal to only move on the surface or in certain directions. And so that's important to understand as well. And I think more of that will become more apparent and more crystalline in my understanding the more that I have practice. So, but there were many breakthrough moments in this workshop, and I kind of want to keep it going so I don't forget. I think it's one of those things where we're in class and we have that I can build a house with my hands kind of energy, and and then we go home and then it kind of fizzles out. So it's all about capturing the lightning in the bottle and making it last, right? So that the things that I learned and those breakthrough moments just they don't just fizzle and die out. So it's important for me to be able to try to harness that and to grow off of that and make it into something more. All right. So we went through these a couple different times. And yeah, so hopefully you've enjoyed this check in. Linda says, letting your spirit take over. Yeah, definitely. Um, and I think when you're in tune with yourself, it just becomes natural. It's one of those things where I can easily kind of dip into some of the that kind of mental state now. Before it was much more challenging. I would have, and it would be uncomfortable. Like I don't know. I kind of feel. I'm not saying that I'm like an athlete or anything, but I do think that there's something to be said about building up a certain level of stamina, and these kind of exercises help with that. Um, like there it almost sounds crazy to make 100 paintings in a very short amount of time. There is something that's very hard about sitting for hours and hours and doing things that are very repetitive, or that are physically demanding on your joints or on your back and different things like that. And it's not easy, and it does take a little bit of training to get to that level. And I kind of feel like, it's almost like an endurance thing, but it's also a strategy. You have to plan out what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. Because this is one of those things, like if you go and do this on your own, you're going to have to find a plan that works for you. And not everything that works for me is going to work for you. There are certain things and exercises that were very kind of monumental for me in my development as an artist. And for other people, it just didn't click, it just didn't hit the same way for them. But for me, there are things like that, like certain things that teachers have said throughout my educational background, and they would say something and it would just like, it would almost physically shake me, that I could feel it in my core. And then I'd be like talking about it after class and being like, oh my gosh, did you get like chills and feel the hairs on the back of your arms raised? And they're like, no. Um, and sometimes they would tell me things and they'd be like, "Oh my gosh, wasn't that so profound?" I was like, "Not really." So I think it's one of those things where it's also that understanding where if you do this, and I definitely encourage everybody to do this, whether you create one piece a day or one piece a week or whatever. But doing this series is very a wonderful way of charting your progress and kind of understanding your your visual lexicon. So I think it's important to understand that, so that when you go into making your own work and you're creating that new body of work. You're not pulling from an empty well. You already kind of have these ideas lined up. And I think that that's a wonderful thing to do, is when you have that repository of ideas and information. And then instead of struggling every time, when you're trying to find a new project, you can kind of just dip into your idea book, and it's laden full of different ideas. Or if you go through and you look at your 100 series project, you can sort of see these different patterns developing and these ways of working, and you can then further harness that. I'm learning a lot about myself and the ways that I work, and also kind of, um, like I said, I was thinking about people that I haven't thought about in a long time. And it's been one of those things where I recognize that I need to be more active in reaching out to people, that I haven't spoken to in a long time, and kind of rekindle some of those relationships from way back when. And I don't know. I always think it's one of those things where I always like to learn from what I'm working on, and listen to the lessons that the world has for me. And it's not so much about just making something and selling something. Um, I've talked about this in the past. William's talked about this in the past. It For us, it's kind of a calling. This lifestyle that we're living is definitely a calling. I mean, there's much easier ways of making money, and but I think for us it's important to be authentic to ourselves. And a part of being authentic to ourselves is understanding what we do and how we do it and what that impact may be. So I feel like, whenever I'm kind of experiencing turmoil, or I'm having a moment of frustration, or I'm working on a project like this or any kind of exercise, I dig deeper into those ideas and lessons. And sometimes the lessons that I learned are not ones that are necessarily like right on the surface. Sometimes they're a little bit deeper. And, anyways, it's kind of the way that I do things. So, anyways, I'm getting a little bit tired, and you can all probably tell that. But I wanted to say thank you to everybody who's kind of tuned in as we've been working through this project. I know there's a lot of other things that you could be doing in your life. So it means a lot to me, to see some of you root me on as I continue with this series. And for anybody who's purchased anything in the shop, or has, contributed to my educational kind of pursuits, I feel so very grateful and appreciative for all of those people out there who believe in me and believe in me and William and the things we're trying to do and the life we're building. So thank you so much. Yeah, there were times in my life where I definitely felt more isolated and alone, and I did not feel supported by certain people in my life, and that was really hard for me. That was really hard. Um, and to know that there is a support network out there who wants the best for us, even if we haven't met in person, or have shared space in a physical way. um, there are still people out there who really, really, really want the very best for us. And I think that that's such a magical thing. It's a really wonderful thing, and I feel really honored and blessed to be a part of this community, and to be able to do what we do. Anyways, So that's what I've been working on today. And I'll finish up the last 25 of these tonight, and I'll do maybe a coat of gesso on maybe a gesso X on the back, and maybe a coat of either matte medium or clear gesso on the top, and let that dry, and then maybe iron them in the morning, and go for the third layer, whatever that's going to be. I kind of have ideas of where I want to go with this, but we'll see. All right. Thank you all again for hanging out with me throughout the day. And for checking on our progress and for supporting this project. Hope you have a great rest of your evening or whatever. And we'll see you tomorrow. All right. See ya.